Regardless of how piss poor many of the final episodes of Game of Thrones were, it is undeniable that the show, for a good long while, existed as the pinnacle of dramatic television. And there were a lot of factors that got it there. The effects were fantastic, the sheer scale of the show was bonkers, the casting was phenomenal, I could go on and on. But the biggest factor, at least in my opinion, as to why the show was once the king of television, was because of the writing, specifically the dialogue. In the first 4 seasons, you would be hard-pressed to find a better written television show out there. So what I want to do in this video is dive into the dialogue of when Game of Thrones was in its prime. Season 3, Episode 7, The Bear and the Maiden Fair, is a great episode to focus on. Not the whole thing though, just one short scene, where Joffrey and Tywin are sharing dialogue. While I'm sure that everyone appreciates the scene off the pure enjoyment of seeing Joffrey verbally pimp slap for 180 seconds, I always get giddy over this scene from an editing standpoint. On the surface, it seems like a straightforward conversation between two characters, and that's good, because like the saying goes, do your job right and no one will know you did it at all. However, the technical aspects of how the writers packed so much information inside such a short scene is really amazing. First, let's watch the scene to get a refresher on what exactly happens. Then after, I will break down what I see as an editor and hopefully be able to explain why I'm so impressed and give a little insight for those who want to view writing more critically. If you are familiar with what happens in the scene already, feel free to skip ahead, but for the rest of us, here we go.
Your Grace.
Grandfather?
You wanted to speak to me?
Yes. I'd like a report on the meetings of my small council.
You're welcome to attend the meetings of your small council, Your Grace. Any or all of them.
I've been very busy. Many important matters require a king's attention.
Of course.
You've been holding the council meetings in the Tower of the Hand instead of the small council chamber.
I have, yes.
May I ask why?
Well, the Tower of the Hand is where I work. To walk from there to here would take time. Time I could otherwise spend productively.
So if I wanted to attend a council meeting, I would now have to climb all the stairs in the Tower of the Hand?
We could arrange to have you carried.
Tell me about the Targaryen girl in the east and her dragons.
Where did you hear about this?
Is it true?
Apparently so.
Don't you think we ought to do something about it?
When I was Hand of the King under your father's predecessor, the skulls of all the Targaryen dragons were kept in this room. And the skull of the last of them was right here. It was the size of an apple.
And the biggest was the size of a carriage.
Yes, and the creature to whom it belonged died 300 years ago. Curiosities on the far side of the world are no threat to us.
But how do we know these dragons are just curiosities and not the beasts that brought the whole world to heel?
Because we have been told as much by the many experts who serve the realm by counseling the king on matters about which he knows nothing.
But I haven't been counseled.
You are being counseled at this very moment.
I should be consulted about such things.
From now on, I will see to it that you are appropriately consulted on important matters, whenever necessary. Your Grace.
See, I told you, really awesome scene. Now, let's watch it again, except I will jump in and point out parts that I think are really impressive from a technical writing standpoint.
Your Grace,
Grandfather?
you wanted to speak to me.
Yes.
So, right off the bat, I want to point out two things to keep in mind going forward. First, this entire scene is constructed in a traditional 3-act structure. There is an introduction with an inciting incident, a midsection with rising action and a climax, and a resolution. This means that the scene by itself really functions as a self-contained narrative. This gives it a compelling feeling, a tension of sorts. Also, pay attention to how well the scene does in giving you information about the show itself. Even if you have never seen any other episode, or better yet, even if you have never even heard of Game of Thrones, this scene fills you in on almost all the important facets of the show, from genre to setting to the conflict to the characters and their roles.
Your Grace,
Grandfather?
you wanted to speak to me.
Yes.
And best of all, it is all done really smoothly. We can keep track of all the information revealed so you can get a picture of how efficient this scene is.
I'd like a report on the meetings of my small council.
You're welcome to attend the meetings of your small council, Your Grace. Any or all of them.
I've been very busy. Many important matters require a king's attention.
Of course.
So, good dialogue not only presents information to the audience to further the plot, it follows and highlights the traits of those speaking. If a character is shy, you should be able to tell it in their speech.
I'm happy to know you, Lady Tarly.
Same goes for an outspoken character.
Oathbreaker, is it? I'll not sit here and swallow insults from a boy so green he pisses grass.
A technique that experienced writers use in dialogue to show the attributes of a powerful or strong character is having that character control the flow of a conversation. Notice how Tywin responds to Joffrey's request.
I'd like a report on the meetings of my small council.
You're welcome to attend the meetings of your small council, Your Grace.
Most people would have immediately responded with a report if the king asked for a report. But the dialogue here works to showcase Tywin's strength as a character. Instead of fulfilling Joffrey's wishes like a less imposing character would, Tywin tells the king he can fulfill his own wishes. He is basically telling Joffrey, it's your responsibility to stay informed, not my responsibility to report to you. Joffrey is the king, the most authoritative person on the entire continent, but if Tywin can assert authority over him, we of the audience can then perceive Tywin to be someone even greater than a king. And this is all done not by a lengthy explanation to the audience, but through dialogue.
You've been holding the council meetings in the Tower of the Hand instead of the small council chamber.
I have, yes.
May I ask why?
Here is another cool, really subtle trick used to show Tywin's power in the situation. Joffrey, the king, is now requesting permission to ask a question.
May I ask why?
This may seem like a small, innocuous common phrase of speech, but it really is these little things that writers have to employ to make dialogue seem natural while also packing in the details. Joffrey seeking permission to ask a question is another signal of how Tywin is exerting power over the direction of the conversation, and therefore the situation.
Well, the Tower of the Hand is where I work. To walk from there to here would take time. Time I could otherwise spend productively.
So if I wanted to attend a council meeting, I would now have to climb all the stairs in the Tower of the Hand?
We could arrange to have you carried.
Tywin moving up the stairs signals the end of the introduction because our characters and our conflicts have been established. Joffrey needs information, and Tywin wants to keep the information to himself. And as I've said in other videos, whenever one character attempts to keep another character from achieving their goal, conflict is created. Now we move into the midsection, where the characters interact with the conflict during rising action until they reach the climax. Also pay attention to the subtext being used in the scene.
We could arrange to have you carried.
Subtext is the implicit underlying meaning, message, and theme of dialogue. Proper use of subtext is usually considered the highest and hardest aspect of dialogue, mainly because you have to write two conversations at once: the explicit spoken conversation and the implicit unspoken conversation. Tywin saying,
"We could arrange to have you carried,"
maintains the explicit formality of addressing the king while also implicitly threatening Joffrey. Pay attention to this type of subtext in the rest of the video because it appears a lot.
Tell me about the Targaryen girl in the east and her dragons.
Where did you hear about this?
Here we have a cool example of Joffrey trying to gain back control of the conversation. He drops his line of questioning on the small council meeting, probably sensing that it isn't going anywhere, and goes right into a demand of information about Daenerys and her dragons, what he really wants in this scene. But Tywin, being Tywin, not wanting to relinquish his power or control, pushes back. Tywin answers Joffrey's question with his own question.
Where did you hear about this?
He continues to try to exert control over the direction and content of the conversation.
Is it true?
Apparently so.
Don't you think we ought to do something about it?
When I was Hand of the King under your father's predecessor, the skulls of all the Targaryen dragons were kept in this room. The skull of the last of them was right here. It was the size of an apple.
Demonstrated here is another technique used in writing dialogue to signal a character that has power. They will respond with something completely unrelated, usually with a story or an anecdote. It shows that they control the flow of the dialogue.
And the biggest was the size of a carriage.
Yes, and the creature to whom it belonged died 300 years ago. Curiosities on the far side of the world are no threat to us.
But how do we know these dragons are just curiosities and not the beasts that brought the whole world to heel?
Here we have our rising action.
Because we have been told as much by the many experts who serve the realm by counseling the king on matters about which he knows nothing.
But I haven't been counseled.
You are being counseled at this very moment.
And there is our climax, layered with subtext. Finally, after this, we move into the resolution.
I should be consulted about such things.
From now on, I will see to it that you are appropriately consulted on important matters, whenever necessary. Your Grace.
Of course, Tywin gets the last word in with some excellent subtext to boot. He tells Joffrey that he will be consulted
Whenever necessary.
Which might be never, considering the little respect that Tywin has for his grandson. Also, Tywin's
Your Grace.
is the subtext cherry on the top of the scene. It is basically him saying, "Oh, that's right, I'm talking to the king. I almost forgot." And looking back at this scene, there are over a dozen pertinent pieces of information given in just 3 minutes. I hope I could help break down why I'm so impressed with this scene. Aside from my Tywin fanboy bias, I really do think it is a tight, well-edited, extremely entertaining few minutes. Oh, in case you're wondering how the two who shall not be named wrote this script, it actually wasn't them. George R. R. Martin himself wrote the script, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. If you like this kind of video and would want to see me dive into the dialogue of other scenes or other shows, just let me know. And for anyone who didn't hear my announcement last week, I opened myself up to do editing. If you have a short story or a novel that you want edited, or you want guidance and coaching on writing, feel free to contact me through email. I offer stuff like developmental edits, where I work alongside you chapter by chapter, novel critiques, concept development, first impression edits, and as I said before, coaching opportunities. And if you're worried about pricing, you can probably relax. I want to make things as affordable as possible for you guys. If you are interested, email me with your genre, word count, and name to get more information. Again, thank you all for watching. As always, it was a pleasure, and I will talk to you all again soon.